The Zurich had been watching Earth for months. Their scouts had gathered data on the planet and its inhabitants, and found a species that seemed almost insignificant to them. They had observed human progress through technology and culture, but had dismissed the possibility that Earth could be a threat. After all, their empire spanned the stars with fleets capable of wiping out entire civilizations in the blink of an eye. The Zurich had conquered worlds and obliterated species without hesitation. They had seen countless forms of life across the galaxy, each with their strengths and weaknesses, and they had learned to predict the patterns of those who came before them. Humans were a species with no true unifying power. They lacked the military might of the other advanced races, and yet there was something about them that intrigued the Zurich, something that set them apart from the countless other lesser civilizations they had encountered in the past. So when the Zurich decided to make contact, they did so with a sense of casual indifference. They would visit Earth, offer a display of their superior technology, and gauge the potential for exploitation or extermination. Humans were nothing more than an interesting diversion in the grand scheme of the galaxy, or so they thought. The delegation landed in the heart of one of Earth's largest cities. The humans greeted them with a mixture of curiosity and caution. At first, they showed nothing but politeness, inviting the Zurich to observe their greatest achievements in science, art, and culture. The Zurich observed from their sleek transport ships, hovering above the bustling streets beneath them. Humans moved in all directions, engaging in commerce and conversation. But even as they marveled at the humans' apparent ability to create beauty and complexity, the Zurich could not shake the sense of something being amiss. The humans were not behaving like the primitive species they had expected. They lacked the awe and reverence that had characterized the reactions of other lesser species in the face of superior alien visitors. Instead, they seemed to be studying the Zurich just as much as the Zurich were studying them. A silent tension lingered in the air, as if both sides were waiting for something to unfold. In the midst of their tour, the humans presented a demonstration to their visitors. They led the Zurich to an arena where simulations of various combat scenarios were held. Humans stood alongside alien technology in an elaborate war game where they tested the limits of strategy and warfare on a grand scale. At first, the Zurich dismissed the exercise as a quaint human pastime. They thought the humans would rely on brute force and antiquated tactics, but to their surprise, the humans displayed an uncanny ability to adapt to every challenge they faced. Within moments, the Zurich realized the humans were far more unpredictable than they had ever anticipated. Their movements were calculated yet fluid, their strategies evolving with every passing second. The Zurich had never seen anything like it before. Humans could improvise faster than any species they had encountered, and their ability to think on their feet in the heat of battle left the Zurich stunned. No matter what weapon or tactic was used by their advanced technology, the humans countered with something entirely unexpected and devastating. The demonstration ended with the humans having successfully outmaneuvered their alien counterparts time and time again. What was supposed to be an exercise in superiority had turned into a humbling defeat for the Zurich. As they watched the humans stand triumphant, they realized they had made a grave miscalculation. The humans were not as insignificant as they had thought. They were far more dangerous than anyone had ever imagined. The Zurich convened in their council chambers, shaken by what they had witnessed. The battle simulations were supposed to be a simple demonstration to test the humans in a controlled environment, but instead they had been forced to confront a stark reality. Humanity was not the weak, primitive species they had anticipated. They had underestimated them in every way. The delegation returned to their ship with grim faces, their previous confidence shattered. They had assumed the humans would follow predictable patterns like every other species they had encountered before, but instead the humans had proven to be entirely unpredictable. The Zurich had seen great warriors and conquerors, but the humans displayed something different, a creative cunning that couldn't be predicted or controlled. The council debated long into the night whether they should continue their mission to Earth or abandon it altogether. Some members argued that the humans represented too much of a threat and should be eliminated before they could pose any danger to the Zurich Empire. Others countered that there was potential in harnessing the humans for their own purposes. Perhaps they could be bent to the Zurich's will as useful soldiers or laborers. But the more they discussed, the more they realized that humans were not a species that could be easily controlled. The humans had a spirit and resilience that could not be broken no matter how much power or technology the Zerg possessed. Meanwhile, on Earth, the humans were equally puzzled by the Zerg delegation. Their first impression was that the Zerg were much like the stories of conquerors from history, eager to prove their superiority over others. But the humans quickly recognized the aliens weren't the all-powerful beings they had expected after witnessing the simulation. Humans knew they had something unique that the Zerg didn't expect. Their ability to fight, adapt, and win against overwhelming odds was their greatest asset, and it had just been showcased to the galaxy in full force. The question now was what to do with this newfound knowledge. Humans had never faced an enemy like the Zerg, but now they knew the stakes were higher than ever, and the world began to change as news of the first contact spread across the globe. There was no panic or fear. Instead, there was a strange sense of unity as nations prepared themselves for whatever the Zerg would bring next. The Zerg weren't just watching from a distance anymore. They were in human territory, and they were learning quickly that humans didn't just roll over when faced with a challenge. In fact, they responded to threats with a fire and determination that no one had expected. The Zerg had brought their advanced technology and weapons to Earth, assuming it would intimidate the humans. But instead, the humans took it as a challenge, an opportunity to prove just how dangerous they could be, and the first contact had opened a door that neither side could walk away from. Back on the Zerg ship, a decision was made. They would test the humans further, but this time they would go beyond simulations. They would engage in real combat, and they would see if the humans truly had the deadly potential that had been hinted at. If they could defeat the best of the Zerg's warriors in a real battle, then maybe they could no longer be ignored. Maybe they could no longer be seen as a small, insignificant species. The Zerg had underestimated the humans once already, and now they found themselves caught in a dilemma. They had made a grave error in thinking the humans were just another species to be brushed aside. After reviewing the data they had gathered, they came to a chilling realization. Humanity's true power was not in their advanced technology, nor was it in any single military tactic they had used. It was something deeper. It was their ability to adapt, their resilience, and their endless drive to survive, to grow stronger with every challenge faced. The Zerg had encountered countless species, some with unimaginable powers, others with devastating weapons, but none had ever exhibited this capacity for continual self-improvement. They dove deeper into human history. They had assumed that the rise of human civilization was just another story of a species stumbling through evolution, struggling to understand the cosmos and their place in it. But as they studied, they found something else, something that both frightened and fascinated them. The humans had experienced countless wars, devastating plagues, and disasters of all kinds, yet each time they had rebuilt and forged forward, often stronger than before. The Zerg couldn't understand it. Their own species, and those of the galaxy they had conquered, had never endured such cycles of violence and destruction, and yet the humans didn't just survive. They thrived. They learned about the wars that shaped human history, the great world wars that had torn the planet apart, leaving millions dead. And yet from these wars, humanity emerged with new ideas, new technologies, and a stronger sense of unity. The Zerg analyzed the rise of empires, the fall of nations, the conflicts that spanned centuries. They discovered that what made humans truly dangerous wasn't just their weapons, their ingenuity, or their sheer numbers. It was their ability to learn from every defeat and disaster, to pick themselves up from the ashes and fight on. As they sifted through humanity's most turbulent times, they found evidence of a unique characteristic. Humans were not afraid to face their own darkness. They did not shy away from their flaws, their mistakes, or their guilt. Instead, they confronted them head-on, and in the process, became stronger. This was the essence of their strength, their willingness to adapt, to evolve, to change course when faced with insurmountable odds. And every time they were knocked down, they came back stronger, with more resolve. The Zerg didn't fully understand it. They could not comprehend how a species with such frailties, such vulnerability, could be so unbeatable in the long run. While the Zurich's empire relied on order, precision, and predictability, humanity thrived in chaos. They learned from every mistake, grew from every failure, and constantly found new ways to fight back, often in ways that defied all logic. Every time an enemy thought they had won, humans would surprise them with an entirely new strategy, a new way to turn the tide of battle. The more the Zurich studied, the more they realized that humans weren't just a race of survivors. They were a race of fighters who fought not only with weapons, but with every bit of their minds, their cultures, and their collective will. They weren't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. The more they thought about it, the more they recognized the truth of what they were facing. A species that had been tempered by centuries of conflict, always pushing forward with unwavering determination. But the Zurich had already made their decision. It was time to test humanity, to see if these instincts, these abilities, could truly be their undoing. If they could defeat the Zurich's best warriors in combat, then perhaps there was no stopping them. It was a test, and if humanity passed, the galaxy would never be the same. The Zurich had spent days analyzing the data, debating the next course of action. Their greatest warriors, elite soldiers who had conquered countless civilizations, would be deployed against the humans. They would test the theory. Could humanity truly rise to meet such a formidable force, or would they crumble like so many others before them? The Zurich had no choice but to push forward. They could not afford to ignore the growing threat that humanity represented. On Earth, the humans had caught wind of the Zurich's plans. While no one knew the exact details, the government's military leaders, intelligence agencies, and the public were buzzing with the knowledge that Earth was about to be tested in a way it never had been before. The preparations began immediately. Nations, once divided by borders and ideologies, quickly set aside their differences. They knew that survival would require unity. And if humanity was to overcome the greatest threat they had ever faced, they would need every resource, every weapon, every mind at their disposal. The humans had their own unique advantage. They knew themselves better than anyone else. Their history was rife with examples of underdogs defying impossible odds, of warriors, leaders, and ordinary citizens who had risen when faced with adversity. The Zurich had been correct in one sense. Humans could improvise in ways no other species could. But what the Zurich had not realized was that this was not just an accident. It was woven into the very fabric of human nature. The human race had been born of struggle and strife, and that had shaped everything they did. As the day of the engagement approached, the Zurich deployed their elite warriors, a group of soldiers trained in every aspect of combat, equipped with the finest technology their empire had to offer. They were confident that they could overwhelm the humans with sheer force and precision. These were beings who had fought and conquered species far more powerful than humans. Surely, the humans would break under the weight of their attack. But the humans had been preparing for this moment for decades, even if they hadn't known it. Their military was skilled in everything from cyber warfare to psychological tactics, and they had developed the ability to fight in a way that made their enemies question reality itself. The human command knew that if they could disrupt the Zurich sense of certainty, if they could unbalance the alien invaders, then they would have a chance. The Zurich were methodical, predictable in their precision, but humans were chaos incarnate, and that chaos was their greatest weapon. The battle commenced in a remote region of Earth where the Zurich and human forces would clash head-on. The Zurich arrived in their ships, expecting a swift and decisive victory. They were met with immediate resistance. The humans, equipped with basic yet effective weaponry, used their knowledge of the terrain to create devastating traps and ambushes. They didn't fight in the open. They fought from the shadows, luring the Zurich into situations where their strength counted for little. The Zurich's advanced technology couldn't account for the sheer unpredictability of human tactics. Every move they made, every calculated strategy they tried to deploy, was countered with something entirely new. It wasn't just the weapons that shocked the Zurich. It was the way humans thought. They didn't follow the rules of warfare as the Zerg understood them. A single human soldier, armed with only basic tools, could turn the tide of battle simply by understanding the weaknesses in the Zerg's tactics. The battle quickly devolved into a chaotic, unpredictable clash where the Zerg, for the first time in their history, found themselves playing defense. And then something even more terrifying happened. The humans didn't just fight to win. They fought with a desperation that made them even more dangerous. They were not fighting for territory or power. They were fighting for their survival, and in that fight, they became unstoppable. The Zerg realized too late that humanity was a force that could never be controlled by their technology, never bent to their will. They fought with a kind of recklessness and ferocity that the Zerg had never encountered before. The battle was far from over. But the Zerg began to realize something that would haunt them. They had underestimated humanity in a way they couldn't fix, and this mistake could be their undoing. The first battle between the Zerg and humanity was only a small skirmish, but the outcome had already shattered the Zerg's confidence. The Zerg warriors, accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with superior technology and tactics, had been caught off guard by the sheer unpredictability of human methods. Despite the alien technology at their disposal, the Zerg were left reeling, unsure of how to proceed. They had expected a quick victory, but instead, they found themselves embroiled in a chaotic, disorienting battle where their advantages seemed to evaporate with every move the humans made. The Zerg withdrew from the field to regroup, their forces wounded and humiliated. The once proud warriors now knew they were facing something they hadn't prepared for, a species that didn't follow any pattern they could decipher. The humans didn't rely on technological superiority or brute strength alone. They fought with their minds, using ingenuity, surprise, and the most unpredictable tactics the Zerg had ever seen. On Earth, the news of the first battle spread across the globe, but the outcome wasn't one of despair or fear. Instead, it sparked something else, something more dangerous. It sparked pride. The humans realized that they had made the impossible possible. They had stood their ground, held their own against the Zerg, and in the process, shattered the illusion of the alien invaders' invincibility. It was the first true victory the human race had ever tasted against a far superior enemy, and it united them in ways that nothing else had. For the first time in centuries, there was a shared sense of purpose and resolve among all people of Earth. The world's governments began to prepare for the inevitable follow-up. The Zerg would not stop with one defeat. They would regroup, learn, and come at humanity with everything they had. But now the humans had a glimpse into the alien invaders' weaknesses, and they would not squander it. The Zerg's over-reliance on predictability had become their Achilles heel. Humanity's ability to think outside the box, to make use of every advantage, no matter how small, was their key to survival. The Zerg, however, had already learned something in their retreat. They had underestimated humanity's resourcefulness, but they were determined to correct their mistake. They began to adapt their strategies, using more advanced technology, more experienced soldiers, and more precise tactics. It was clear to the Zerg that they would need to push their invasion to the next level if they were to succeed. They could no longer take humanity lightly. What they didn't understand was that the humans were not just prepared for a battle, they were prepared for war. The initial skirmish had been only a test of the humans' survival instincts. Now they had a real enemy to face, and they were ready. Humanity's military forces were assembling on a scale that the Zerg had never seen before. Humans were not just gathering their strongest soldiers, they were gathering their brightest minds, their most creative engineers, their most cunning tacticians. The entire world was gearing up for the fight of their lives, and no one was sitting idly by. The first battle had proven one thing. The Zerg were not invincible. They were powerful, yes, but they were not infallible. Humans were capable of fighting back in ways that no one had ever imagined. And that realization would echo through every corner of the galaxy as the war for Earth's survival raged on. The humans would never stop fighting, and the Zerg would soon learn that they were facing an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. The victory had been small, but it was a victory nonetheless. Across Earth, the tide of war began to shift in humanity's favor. News of the defeat of the Zerg's elite warriors spread like wildfire, stoking a fire of hope and defiance among Earth's people. Governments, once fractured by political infighting, now stood united, focused on a single goal: survival. The Zerg, who had once believed that Earth would crumble under the weight of their invasion, were now facing the humanity that was more determined and more resourceful than they had ever anticipated. But the Zerg, in their pride and hubris, refused to be humbled. They regrouped, recalculated, and began planning a much larger-scale invasion. The initial strategy had been to shock the humans with overwhelming force, but that had failed. The humans had adapted, had fought back with an unpredictability that even the Zerg could not anticipate. Now, the Zerg decided to shift their tactics. No longer would they rely solely on brute strength. They would need something more. They would need to destabilize humanity, make them turn on one another, and force them into submission through division. A secret coalition of alien species, some of whom had long been subjugated by the Zerg Empire, was formed. They saw the Zerg as an unstoppable force, and they feared the consequences of a human victory. These races, long accustomed to oppression, now had a chance to strike back, and they hoped to forge an alliance with the Zerg to ensure that the humans were eradicated before they could spread beyond their homeworld. The Zerg welcomed this alliance, knowing they would need all the help they could get to defeat the humans. Together, they would create a force capable of bringing Earth to its knees. The coalition's forces included a wide array of advanced alien technologies and weaponry, each one more deadly than the last. They were ready to unleash their full might on humanity. However, they'd vastly underestimated humanity's greatest strength: unity. The first signs of the Zerg's new alliance began to surface when alien forces moved into positions around Earth's outer orbit, preparing for the next phase of the invasion. But the humans, always quick to adapt, responded with a level of coordination that no one had expected. Every nation, every faction that had once fought over resources or ideology, now worked together as a cohesive unit. The threat of annihilation united them in a way that no single force ever could. Using their extensive communication networks, human leaders quickly learned about the alien coalition and began to strategize on how to break their unity. If the Zerg and their new allies were to be defeated, the human military would need to strike first, disrupting the coalition before they could fully mobilize. Every human soldier, scientist, engineer, and civilian now understood what was at stake. The fight was no longer just about Earth's survival. It was about the survival of every species in the galaxy that had ever been oppressed by the Zerg. The Zerg, on the other hand, were blind to the human unity that was forming. They thought of humanity as a disorganized, chaotic mass of individuals, weak in their division. But the Zerg failed to realize that, in the face of extinction, humanity was more than just a collective of nations. They were a single species with one purpose: to resist, to fight, and to never surrender. As the human forces prepared for the coming war, the Zerg's confidence began to waver. The first battle had been a shock, but this new alliance of alien species, coupled with their own arrogance, had led them to underestimate the humans once again. And this time, humanity was ready to prove that they were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their future, and the future of every race that had ever been under the Zerg's rule. The Zerg's alliance of alien forces began its advance, their massive fleets gathering in orbit around Earth. Thousands of ships, each one bristling with advanced weapons and technologies, loomed ominously in the void. But humanity, far from shrinking in fear, had begun to rally. Earth's militaries were fully mobilized, and their unity was like nothing the Zerg could have imagined. The world's brightest minds and most capable strategists came together, their plan to break the Zerg alliance taking shape. Humanity's first move was one of deception. Knowing the Zerg were accustomed to a direct approach, they decided to strike at the heart of the coalition by sowing confusion. Using their newly developed cyber warfare capabilities, the human military launched a series of coordinated attacks on the alien fleets. They infiltrated the communication networks, sending false information to each alien race. Each species in the coalition was told that their allies were preparing to betray them, that their fleets had been compromised, and that the Zerg were plotting to eradicate them after the destruction of Earth. The Zerg had no idea how to respond to the rising distrust within their ranks. Meanwhile, the human forces launched a series of small-scale, highly coordinated raids on the outer territories of the Zerg's alliance. They targeted supply lines, communication hubs, and vulnerable installations. Each strike was meticulously planned, ensuring that no single alien faction could retaliate without fearing betrayal from the others. The Zerg and their allies were caught off guard, and their reaction was one of chaotic scrambling. They hadn't anticipated this level of strategic sophistication from the humans. Earth was no longer the weak, isolated planet they had once thought it to be. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were playing their enemies against one another, creating cracks in the very foundation of the Zerg's coalition. As the alien forces wavered, the human military launched a second, far bolder offensive. Utilizing newly constructed spacecraft, human engineers had managed to reverse engineer some of the alien technology captured in earlier skirmishes. With a fleet of their own, the humans prepared to launch a direct assault on the Zerg's flagship, an enormous vessel that served as the nerve center of the entire invasion. It was a dangerous gambit, but if they could cripple the flagship, they would cut off the head of the alien forces. The Zerg would be thrown into disarray, their remaining forces left without leadership and direction. The operation was a tense, high-risk mission. A small group of human ships, aided by stealth technology and guerrilla tactics, approached the flagship under the cover of a massive asteroid field. Their goal wasn't to destroy the entire vessel, but to disable its command center, rendering it ineffective. As they made their way closer, the Zerg flagship's defense systems began to react, but the human ships had anticipated the move. Using decoys and misdirection, they managed to breach the outer perimeter of the flagship's defenses. Inside, the humans launched a coordinated assault on the command bridge. They fought their way through, using every available resource to neutralize the Zerg officers and soldiers who guarded the central hub. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the human military launched a simultaneous ground offensive against the alien invaders' remaining strongholds. The Zerg, caught between two fronts and with their command structure collapsing, struggled to hold their ground. The attack on the flagship was a success. The Zerg were forced to retreat, their fleet leaderless and demoralized. It was a stunning blow, a victory that reverberated throughout the galaxy. The Zerg, once thought invincible, were now reeling from a series of crushing defeats at the hands of humanity. The humans had not only defended their world, but had also sent a clear message to the galaxy. They were not to be underestimated. And in the midst of it all, the alien coalition began to splinter. The once strong alliance now seemed fragile, with each faction questioning its loyalty to the Zerg. The Zerg had relied on fear and force to unite their allies, but humanity had proven that unity born of necessity, born of the will to survive, was far more powerful than any threat or intimidation. With the balance of power shifting in humanity's favor, the Zerg were left with a stark choice: retreat or face the full might of a united human force. The first wave of the invasion had failed, and now humanity was ready for the next. The Zerg were stunned. Their alliance had fractured, their flagship was lost, and their forces were in disarray. For the first time since their invasion began, they found themselves facing the true wrath of humanity, a species they had once dismissed as insignificant. The Zerg had relied on fear and overwhelming force to maintain control over countless civilizations, but now, for the first time in their history, they were confronted with an enemy that fought not just for survival, but for the very essence of their existence. The leaders of the Zerg, once proud and confident, now realized that the war was slipping from their grasp. They had miscalculated humanity's strength, not just in terms of combat prowess, but in their resilience, ingenuity, and unwavering unity. The human race had come together in a way that no alien species had ever anticipated. What had started as a battle for Earth's survival had now evolved into a struggle for the future of the entire galaxy. In their desperation, the Zerg called for reinforcements, an armada of ships, the likes of which had never been seen before. They brought together the remaining forces of their empire and allied species, preparing for a final assault on Earth. But what the Zerg didn't know was that humanity had already anticipated this move. The human forces, bolstered by their newfound technological advancements, were ready. The Zerg would find that this final assault would not be as easy as they had hoped. On Earth, the world's military leaders, scientists, and engineers worked in unison, preparing for the decisive moment. Humanity's greatest minds came together to devise a plan that would not only defend the planet, but turn the tide of the war permanently in their favor. The resources of every nation were pooled into a unified war effort, an effort that was about to make the Zerg wish they had never set foot in human space. The plan was audacious, risky, and dangerous, but it was their only chance. Humanity would strike directly at the heart of the Zerg's reinforcements, an enormous fleet gathering in orbit. Using a combination of stealth technology, newly designed weapons, and advanced tactics, the human forces would infiltrate and destroy the Zerg fleet before it could reach Earth. It would be a battle unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The human fleet, led by their best commanders, entered the battlefield with precision and determination. The Zerg's forces were vast, but their cohesion was fractured. The distrust within the alien ranks had been sown, and it showed in the chaotic movements of their ships. Humanity exploited every weakness, striking quickly and decisively, taking out key vessels with surgical strikes that disrupted the Zerg's coordination. The Zerg's superior firepower was no match for humanity's ability to adapt and outthink them at every turn. As the battle raged in the vast emptiness of space, the final blow came when a coordinated strike from Earth's forces successfully crippled the Zerg's command ship, the last of their fleet's leadership. With their flagship destroyed, the remaining Zerg forces scattered in panic, retreating back into the dark corners of the galaxy. Their empire, once proud and unassailable, was crumbling under the weight of their own arrogance. The humans had done it. Against all odds, they had defeated the Zerg invasion. The victory was not just a military one. It was a statement. Humanity had proven that no force, no matter how advanced or powerful, could extinguish their spirit. It was a victory for every oppressed species in the galaxy, a message that no empire, no matter how vast, could subjugate a species willing to fight for their survival. In the aftermath of the battle, Earth began to rebuild. The scars of war were deep, but humanity had emerged stronger, more united, and more determined than ever. They had not only protected their world, they had forged a new legacy for the human race, one of resilience and strength in the face of overwhelming odds. And though the Zerg had retreated for now, humanity knew this would not be the last time they would face such a threat. But they were ready. The galaxy had learned the true power of humanity, and it would never forget.